Hey guys, I'm back with another video in the series, and we want to talk about controversies of art. And art can be controversial in a couple of ways. And one of the ways we're going to talk about today is abstract art. And then we're going to talk about how abstract art, how the principles of art can sometimes be used for controversial things. I will be making reference to the History Channel 10 works of art that made people really mad. That's in the link on the accompanying PowerPoint that you should also have access to. All right, just as a review, these are the 7 principles of design that we talked about in a previous video, and these are kind of the rules. These are some of the rules that artists use to see things, and you can see those in the previous presentations or this one as well. All right, in a similar situation, in the previous video, which hopefully you watched, I introduced the concept of mimesis and the fact that art shows an imitation of aspects of reality. And we, in that previous discussion, talked about how even though the mirror is distorted, art is never reality. Its distortion itself brings about an aspect of truth and helps us see our world in a new way, and to see parts of it we don't see and to see it in a new way. All right, new idea. I want to talk a little bit about the medium and the message, because this is very important to think about in terms of controversy. Medium is kind of like media. It's like how it travels. Like, for example, water and air are both mediums, right? That have different properties to them. And medium can mean like a genre, like a short story versus dance versus sculpture, or it can also be the tools of those particular genres and the techniques. Like, for example, wood print, the techniques of hatching, in acting, for example, the ability to convey emotion or camera shots. The message is what's being trying to communicate. One human mind is trying to communicate to another with a particular medium, and they have something to say. They have something to express. It can be an opinion, it can be a theory, it can be an impression, it can be trying to relate to something an experience that they've done. All of those can be the message, but those are kind of separate from most of the time we think of it. However, Marshall McLuhan famously declared the medium is the message. And what he said is that a lot of times the way that a medium operates gives certain constraints or liberties to the way that we think. Now, first off, this is not saying that, at least I'm not saying that it's good or bad, but I'm saying that each one of those aspects has a strength and a weakness. For example, Plato, back in his Platonic dialogue, the Phaedrus, thought that writing was a horrible idea because if you wrote, you didn't memorize, which is true. If you write things down externally, you don't have to have them in your head. So, but at the same time, we know advantages for writing of being able to transfer information across time or across great distances. So think about, for example, the internet. The internet, the medium of the internet is good for some messages and not as good for others. If you're breaking up with your girlfriend, boyfriend, and a text message, that's going to have certain repercussions. In a similar way, if the pleasure of clicking through the internet and getting the immediate satisfaction gives us a lot of speed and freedom and anonymity, but it also gives us a frightening amount of information that we know that we make decisions about in very, very small amounts. Not good, not bad, but important. So now then, hang with me here. When art becomes more abstract, the message of art, that's the information that's conveyed by the artist, is thinking about the medium. So abstract art is art contemplating itself. And for those of you who watch previous videos, this refers to Scott McCloud's big triangle in chapter 2 of Understanding Comics. So you start asking the question about, well, what is the meaning of art? So art is when an artist takes the medium and starts looking at the medium, instead of using it to convey an idea, it actually conveys an idea about the medium itself. Trippy. All right, But what exactly do we mean by this? Abstract in what way? Well, if you look at the word abstract, it means to draw away from. In other words, it draws away from, for example, the realism of realistic art and the iconic universality of iconic art, and draws away and starts thinking about itself. Remember, like everything else in the big triangle, this is kind of a to what extent slippery slope line, right? Some work is more abstract than others. Some work can still be focusing on message, but maybe focusing on the way that the medium conveys the message. But some art seems to be contemplating only only the medium itself. And it can be abstract in all these different ways. This Kandinsky piece seems very much like exploring shapes and colors. The white on white is questioning kind of what is the nature of art. And then Guernica, which is probably a little bit lower on Scott McCloud's Big Triangle, is kind of like thinking about things about time and pain with this thing that's near his cubist element. So with all these principles of arts and abstract and balance, proportion, emphasis, and then these ways to categorize it as far as realistic and iconic and abstract, how do you tell if it's good art? This, for example, is a really, really good art piece. It's a horrible piece of propaganda against Jews that was selling the idea that Jews transmitted typhus. But it's a very, very good art piece and obviously uses the arts very, very well. So the medium is excellent. The medium is very good. The message is that we need to get rid of all the Jews because they're vermin. This is, of course, heinous. But art can be used for good and bad. But does that necessarily mean that it's always neutral? In other words, how far does artistic license go? How far is creativity just being creativity? How much of art relates to the context?